The question, therefore, is that. Oh, sorry. The Honourable Ruth Dyson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry, I was sitting behind you and you obviously didn't hear me. I'm disappointed, actually, rather than pleased, to be able to contribute in this debate on part 2 of the Environmental Reporting Bill. And the reason I'm disappointed is that this was the opportunity for New Zealand to not just catch up, but be ahead of the game. We could have been, again, a world leader in terms of environmental reporting. We've lagged a long way behind in this space, and the original minister who drafted this bill, the Honourable Amy Adams, took a lot of time to praise herself in introducing this legislation. The Honourable Nick Smith's now responsible for it, and it's my view that they deserve some credit for introducing an environmental reporting bill. It was a gap in what we did as a nation, but to totally undermine the integrity of such a good move is foolish. The government have had the opportunity throughout the Select Committee process. They know what the submission said in regard to who sets the topics for environmental reporting, and it is my view that they've displayed an arrogance and being completely out of touch with what people who are concerned about the environment in New Zealand and internationally would like to see in this legislation. I urge the Minister to consider the opportunity that he now has before him, to accept amendments to this legislation so that the whole of Parliament can back him as a world leader and say, we've listened and we've got it right. Up till now, he hasn't been able to do that, and I think it's a real disappointment. Mr. Chairman, it's an opportunity that I think we've lost. There is no integrity in a system that has the Minister for the Environment responsible for setting the topics that are then reported publicly, holding the government to account and being able to genuinely measure our progress in issues that are about as serious as you can get, should be something that is without challenge. The Minister should be able to stand up and say, this is what we have achieved. This is what the Minister would be able to say. But now, every time the Minister gets up to crow about any progress in environmental reporting, the obvious criticism, which he could avoid but isn't choosing to do so, the obvious criticism will be, well, of course you've made progress in that regard, in that domain. That's why you chose that topic to have reported against. Why would any sensible minister leave himself open to that criticism when the rest of Parliament is saying, change it and you'll have total support of the Parliament for this legislation? So I don't really understand why a minister would just act in such an arrogant way and demonstrate how out of touch he is with what people wanted. It's not a scandal, it's just a gross disappointment. Mr. Chairman, I just want to move on to noting the supplementary order paper number 92 that my colleague Sua Williams-Seo has moved. And again, I think this gives Parliament, the Parliament of New Zealand, the opportunity to really put its mark on its support and concern about what is happening in the broader Pacific. So in the amendments that Sua Williams-Seo is wanting to move relate to how the state of New Zealand's economic and environmental activities impacts not just on New Zealand's state of the environment, which is the primary purpose of this bill, but the impacts on the Pacific region's climate and ecosystems and its people. I think they're very good amendments. They amend clauses 7 and clauses 10. And again, I'd say to the Minister, let's understand that environmental concerns should be above party politics. We should have more genuine debate and discussion on issues that threaten the livelihood and well-being of people around the world. And if there's any space in this Parliament for working together, I would have thought it was in this space. I also want to commend and support Green Party member Eugenie Sage's supplementary order paper, which is number 87. Again, it amends clause 7. It looks like quite a simple amendment, but I think Mr. Chairman.
The Honourable Ruth Tyson.
But I think it adds a depth to the original intent. It certainly doesn't change it, but it gives more relevance and depth to those provisions in terms of the domain reporting. The amendments that Eugenie Sage is proposing to clauses 10, which add the words "and analyse" after "describe," again, don't change the intention, but I think shows an understanding and a reflection of what was heard during the committee stage, during the select committee process, and this amendment reflects the positive contribution that submitters made to that process and some members' understanding of it. And I think the Minister probably would be inclined to support that sort of amendment. It doesn't detract, it doesn't change the focus, it certainly doesn't get him into any challenge in regard to domain setting, but it adds a depth to it that I think is very useful. Mr. Chairman, as I said at the outset, this really could have been, this bill could have been the opportunity for New Zealand to gain its rightful place as a world leader on the international scene in terms of environmental issues. We certainly have been there in the past. In recent times, we've slid behind, and I think that's to our shame. That's to the regret of most citizens of New Zealand. It is, though, an opportunity that has been missed, first of all by the Honourable Amy Adams and now by the Honourable Nick Smith. I urge them and their Cabinet colleagues to reflect on the simple amendments that have been proposed to the primary disagreement in this legislation, which is around the integrity of the topics that are reported against. Who sets the topics, and how can the public of New Zealand have faith that these are genuine reports about the state of our environment? If the Minister was able to agree to those proposals, it would be a very good day for democracy and for the New Zealand Parliament. It would be a very good day for environmental reporting. Actually, the Minister would then be able to take all the credit and crow about it. And as I said in my previous call, it seems very puzzling to me that the Minister, who is, on the scale of things, committed to progressing environmental issues, I have to say, why would the Minister leave himself so vulnerable to such obvious criticism when, by agreeing to amendments to this legislation at this committee stage, he could remove all that opposition? He would become a bit of a star in the environmental reporting space in New Zealand. We might not praise him too loudly, but he would deserve praise if he put back into the system some integrity in the reporting, and at the moment that's missing. So there are amendments that provide that opportunity. There are amendments that I've referred to already that add depth rather than change the meaning of some of the specific clauses, particularly 7 and 10. And there is a new supplementary order paper that's been tabled from Sue Williams CO, which I think really puts another level of potential leadership in the New Zealand Parliament space, and that is to look at not just the obligations that we should have as New Zealanders in the environmental reporting on how our environment is, but also the impacts on our Pacific neighbours. So, Mr. Chairman, I would really like to be saying Labour supports this bill. It was a space that needed to be filled. I support environmental reporting. We're not able to support it because the ministers have taken out the independence and integrity that is required for us to have confidence that this will not be manipulated for political gains I'm not accusing the minister and the chair of doing that, by any minister who has this portfolio. A simple amendment could remove that criticism, could give this reporting the integrity that it needs, and the citizens of New Zealand confidence that we're prepared to challenge ourselves. We're prepared as a parliament to look at all the issues that we should be monitoring in environmental reporting, not just the ones that work for the benefit of the minister. So it's an opportunity that should have been taken up. It is legislation that in theory should be supported, I think, by all parties in this parliament, but it's an opportunity that's been lost because I think the ministers have had an arrogant attitude, have been out of touch with where the public of New Zealand are going, and I urge them to reconsider and hopefully support the amendments to give the bill the integrity it needs.
Mr Chairman.
The